love. It's just me, Emily. Welcome to my podcast where we explore how to discover your soul's purpose, embody your essence, and live a life in alignment with your truth. Today, I am joined by Sally Hawk, who is an evidential medium and the founder of VerySoul. Sally started her career in financial services, eventually running a series of large global businesses for Bank of America. But after a number of unexpected spirit experiences, she retired at 48 and trained to be an evidential medium with some of the top experts in the world. She founded VerySoul, which is a platform that provides mediums with a safe, supportive, and completely free space to grow and develop their abilities, and clients with an easy way to find qualified, compassionate mediums able to facilitate truly life-changing communications with their loved ones. I know because I have used the platform myself to connect with my late husband, Ian, and this is what we are going to be diving into on today's episode. All right, welcome to the show, Sally. I am so excited to dive into this really important conversation that I feel like so many people have all these ideas and skepticism around. So I can't wait to hear just about your story and mediumship, what exactly that is, your thoughts on the afterlife, and more. But
Awesome.
first, I want to.
Thank you, first of all, for having me. I really appreciate that, Emily.
Of course. Well, after my reading with you, with one of your mediums, and just learning about your mission, I just thought you were the perfect person to have on for this conversation. So thank you for your time and energy.
Yeah.
So the way that I like to begin every show, because this is all about, honoring our truth and living out our soul's purpose, I'd love to know, what masks do you wear? And when you take them off, what do you see?
Oh gosh. So masks I wear. So I come from a large corporate background. So running large global businesses. So there's a lot of masks that get developed on the way to being able to do that. There's
Totally.
toughness that you have to build up. There's a certain strategic view. There's the way you interact with people. So I have tons of different masks, and I've actually been trained in masks, as many people in the corporate world have. You know, you go through the Myers-Briggs and different developmental classes, and it helps you learn how to kind of morph yourself to be more flexible around other people. So I'm a pretty flexible mask, but that is still a mask. So I think that the way that I think about Emily is, I think everything about our humanness is a mask.
Mm,
Um, I think until you're really working from the soul,
hmm
it's all just some culmination of the masks that we've developed. And so for me, I have, hopes and dreams and fears and inadequacies and, all the different things that everyone else has. And it's just a matter of trying to recognize, for me, when I'm in those modes, when I feel
Mhm.
a little bit afraid, when I feel a little bit intimidated or anything like that, and then go back to my base soul so that I can operate with intention and operate with authenticity.
Right. I feel you, because the masks almost go up like subconsciously. And so until we're aware, we have to like pause and then come back home, and that's to soul. And that's such a constant practice, I find.
Absolutely. I just spent a couple of weeks with my family and my best friends on vacation. And one of the things that is great about being with people who know you that well is they know all your masks. They know when it's BS. They know when you're, exaggerating or whatever it is you're doing. They know. And it's a constant for us. It's a bonding experience because we're making fun of the things we did back when we were 20. And like, you know what I mean? Like, that is to me what the depth of love is when you can honor somebody else's masks as well as their soul.
Yeah. And there's a function for both, right? I mean, yeah, all those masks were there to protect us at some point,
Absolutely.
to bridge a connection with someone. Yeah. So I love that. Thank you. So you went from wearing your corporate mask to becoming an evidential medium. Can you explain what exactly an evidential medium is? And is there a difference between that and like a regular medium?
Sure, sure. First of all, a lot of people get confused between psychics and mediums. Uh,
Okay.
Psychic is somebody who works with your energy, and a medium is someone who works with your loved one's energy. Uh,
Mm,
so when you're going to find out about your future or you want to know, like, how's my relationship going to turn out, things like that, then you go to a psychic. But mediums, we connect with loved ones who have crossed.
mm,
The difference between a regular medium and an evidential medium is an evidential medium holds sacred the requirement that we must produce compelling evidence of who that loved one is, evidence that we could
mm,
not possibly know, for us to be able to undeniably um, share their communications in a way that
mm,
we know that it's authentic. So, it's actually one thing that a lot of people don't know about mediums is evidential mediums take their work extremely seriously and can cause themselves a lot of stress with making sure that they are always producing great evidence. One of the interesting things that most people don't know about mediums is that many mediums find their mediumship through trauma.
mm.
So, a fair percentage of our mediums, for instance, lost children and in their grief, in their searching, in their, wanting to reconnect and be connected to their loved one, that's how they found this space of mediumship. Many of our mediums are in jobs, previously in jobs where they're in people's energy all the time, people who are suffering. So, for instance, nurses, doctors, uh, therapists, school teachers, right?
Yeah.
There are definitely trends to the kinds of experiences or the kinds of activities that start to open us up to this ability to be a medium. And that also sets up the mediums to be incredibly compassionate in their service.
I mean, thank you for naming that. And that makes so much sense to me because I think, whether it's loss or another major form of trauma, that's kind of the moment where it stops us in our tracks. Trauma shakes us to our core and really forces us to see life through a different lens. And so yeah, it makes sense that you'd have like a moment that really invites you into this awakening and seeing these new possibilities for communicating with spirit. Um, that's really powerful. So, what would an example of some of that evidence be? Are you open to sharing? Kind of what has come up for you in like a reading per se?
Yeah, I mean, it can be everything from the basics of who somebody is, So if I had somebody's mother with me, I might immediately feel that she was very anxious person,
Mm.
that she always kept a very tidy house, but there was one thing that she couldn't stand, and that was her laundry. She would laundry. That it could be that kind of evidence, that just rings so true and is clearly differentiating, from other
Oh,
people. It can also be things that are incredibly unexpected. So I had a reading once before I even knew I was a medium. I had a reading once where the medium told me some things that I really didn't think were true, of
mhm.
um, my mother-in-law. And I said, I don't think that's right. And she said, just write it down. I think you might find this piece of information useful. And sure enough, the next day, the things that she said became apparent to me when I opened a box and I found some old pictures and some old cards. Uh,
Oh, wow.
had told me that her favorite memory was being on this certain vacation, which I was sure she had never been on until I opened that box. So it can be things that you know, it can be things that you don't yet know, but you will find out soon after the reading. It can be things that somebody else knows and you're meant to triangulate with them to be sure,
Yeah.
you know?
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I had one reading that where the medium said, Ian's telling you that there's something that he really likes in the fridge or the freezer or something. And it was he always would eat popsicles with our daughter. So yeah, just like those little tidbits make that we know our person by. And it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, and when it comes to the excellence of the mediums develop over time, and so the evidence can get more and more and more specific. So, for
Mm,
one medium might say there's something in the freezer he wants to draw your attention to. Another medium might say it's popsicles. Another
yeah.
might say he loves banana popsicles and he wants you to give your child a banana popsicle. Uh, it comes with time and with practice. There are mediums who can give you addresses,
Cool.
give you numbers. It's just we're constantly developing.
Okay, so that's where I wanna go next is, like, how does it actually work? And what are they actually developing?
Yes.
What are the mediums actually developing?
So, I think that the way people talk about it a lot, I didn't find helpful to me. So the way people talk about it a lot is there's this energetic connection, and I raise my vibration, they lower their vibration, and we communicate. I don't really think about it that way. I think about it much more practically. Uh,
Okay.
I have to get myself out of the way first, which is so much harder than people realize. Everything that's going
Mm,
on in my head, everything I'm thinking about for the next day. Did I get someone's
mm,
lunch? Did I, pay that bill? All those things, right? I got to get all that out of the way. I also have to know my instrument incredibly well. So, for instance, um, we talked about my corporate life. Well, by background, I trained to be an opera singer. I'm a mathematician. I'm a banker. I'm a mom. I'm a community activist. I'm a bunch of things. And all those things are in my instrument. And I need to let spirit use those things,
mm.
but I have to let them play the instrument.
Wow.
You started off talking about masks. I have to let them have control of which parts of my instrument they use. That is the hardest thing about being a medium. But what I will tell you is they are always there. They're constantly trying to communicate with us. Most of our minds
Mm,
are just way too busy to even hear them.
mhm.
And when you make space and when you tell them that you welcome them in, they will come. And it just takes a while before you can recognize the subtle cues and the
Mhm.
subtle feelings that they give you.
I totally resonate with that, and I feel like it's been a process for me because in the beginning, I was really closed off to the idea of mediumship, or I just didn't it's not that I was closed off, I just didn't really believe it, and I think I was scared, like, that Ian wouldn't actually come through for me.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
But once I had my first reading and there was so much evidence that he was there, it completely opened my mind to the possibility of his presence being around us at all times. And yeah, it's been a journey of figuring out what are those subtle cues. And even before this interview, a certain song came on that was all about like the afterlife.
Yeah.
And then as I came downstairs, there was an image on my aura frame of Ian and his aunt, who was the first person who connected me to, um, a medium. And yes, you can say it's coincidental, and I wanna get into some of the arguments against mediumship as well, but to me, I don't know, I feel like that's Ian. He's there.
Yeah, I think everything that you've expressed, I've heard numerous times from other clients, the fear of what if they don't come through? What if they do come through?
Mhm.
Don't like the way I'm doing things. What if, you know, um, I don't know, like just all the what ifs. There's definitely that challenge, but um, in my experience, doing and watching and hearing about thousands and thousands of sessions,
Yeah,
it's never anything but beautiful. And they never want to place any burden on us.
yeah.
They're not judging us. They only want to help us. They only want to support us. And so that's why they try so hard to get through. And if they can get through directly to you, that is so much better than coming through a medium. But because we are all burdened with this humanness, That's why mediums exist. We don't want to become a replacement for your direct connection. We just want to help show you that the connection is still there, that your loved one is still there, so that you'll be more likely to notice them when they do the kinds of things that you describe.
I mean, and that's been my that's been my experience, absolutely, is that I needed the medium to open up I needed to go through that experience to open my mind to the possibility that Ian was still with me. And now, it'll be 6 years at the time that this episode publishes. We kind of have like our own dialogue, which is so beautiful, a way of communicating to each other from beyond the physical realm that I'm also trying to teach to my kids. And I hope that they can then create their own unique language with him as well. Um, but yeah, so how did you find out that you had these abilities?
I found out by accident. I I did not have mediumistic experiences as a child, but I did always have high psychic ability. I didn't know it. I thought it was natural. I thought it was normal. But I guess it's about 20 years ago now, I had a awakening experience, and that was my mother-in-law who was unexpectedly passing in Montreal. Uh,
Mm,
Showed up at my bedside in North Carolina, and I knew that it was because she was passing, and I knew why she was there. I couldn't see a face. I saw her energy image, and it was
mhm.
full, and I was stunned, and I actually I knew immediately who it was, and I knew why she was there to say goodbye to my daughter, her only grandchild, but it didn't dawn on me at the time, how do I know those things? Like,
Right.
all that my eyes can see is the energy cloud. Um, and it wasn't until after when my husband called to tell me that he had gotten a call that she had passed, um, I started frantically researching, and that's when I really started to ask myself the question, "Wait, how did I know what she wanted? How did I know it was her?" Uh,
Mhm.
and that's when I discovered mediumship. And so like most people would, I tried a few mediums. I talked with friends. I researched what universities were doing around the topic because, you know, to me, a lot of it felt like woo woo kind of stuff that
Mhm.
I'm really into. I'm scientific and I'm very
You're coming from like corporate Bank of America.
exactly. But I knew it was real and I knew it happened. And so as I explored more and started to open myself more to it, more things started happening accidentally. And then at one point, um, one of my accidental experiences, um, was very important to somebody else. That I had to relay that information to somebody else. And when they told me how meaningful that was to them, that's when I knew I had to get serious and I had to go study and really train to do this well because it was so impactful for them. Just the little bits of information that I shared and their grieving of their child that, you suddenly feel like, well, if my instrument can do this, it,
Yeah.
who am I to say no?
Absolutely. I love what a beautiful journey into your purpose. I think sometimes what really struck me is how you said you didn't really know that you had this gift because it was just so innate in your being. And I think that happens to a lot of us, not just with mediumship but with a lot of our own unique gifts and strengths because we have it, we don't see it as like our own divine uniqueness. And it's almost like we need like this wake up or someone to almost like mirror back, yeah, but I don't actually have these abilities or I don't see the world like this as well. And that's kind of like the light bulb moment for you to say, okay, this is something that is really unique to me that I didn't even know that I had. And then you go and cultivate it and change someone's life. And that's kind of the through line into this next chapter of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do a lot of coaching of executives, and now I coach a lot of young adults who are trying to overcome poverty. And that reflection part of helping them understand what their instrument is
Mm,
clearly made for, and helping them discover that is really, that's, to me, that's the core of coaching. That's the core of,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, and so many of us have been given a recipe for what success should look like and what are the various jobs that we need to get there, and we end up disconnecting from our unique gifts and strengths, our God-given gifts and strengths, and instead go on a whole nother path which can really lead to us like separating from ourselves. And I'm curious, in your experience, do you see your role in like corporate America? And you also said you were an opera singer. Was this more of like a coming back home, or was this just like a natural evolution of your purpose?
You know, it's so interesting because I think about this sometimes. I think about the fact that it seems like every um, aspect of the things that I've done, including in my corporate life, big things and little things, all the different skills I had to learn are now being put to incredible use
Mm,
by the folks on the other side in terms of what I'm building right now with VerySoul. Um,
yeah.
so I don't in any way regret that part of my journey. It was a necessary part of the journey, but what you described in terms of the becoming disconnected from yourself, absolutely. I remember I retired at 48, and I remember when I retired, I started yoga, and I realized my mind is not even connected to my body anymore.
Mm,
That's how corporate I was. That's how much I worked. I was always traveling and in meetings and things like that. So just reconnecting my mind to my body was step number one.
yeah.
So yeah, you get disconnected, but I don't know. Were all those things that I did planned for me? Was I supposed to do those things to become what I am now? Or did someone just look and say, "Hey, there's she seems to have what we need to get this job done. Let's tap her." I don't really know.
I mean, it's the great that's the mystery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
We'll never I mean, I've been studying the Vedic belief of like our souls choosing this path, right? And so it's like one perspective is your soul chose Sally in her meat suit, right? Like we're all wearing our meat suits
Yeah,
and we come into the life that with like parents and certain religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, whatever. And part of our work is to essentially take away like those layers to come back to soul and who we are. It kind of goes back to our question at the very beginning, and I don't know, is that what this whole existence is about?
yeah. I don't think we get to know. So
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it anymore. But
Mhm.
just a couple of things in response to what you said. That term meat suit, I was thinking about that this morning. A lot of people talk about that. I hate that term, and I'll tell you why I hate that term. Because it sounds so throwaway. And I actually
Mm,
of my body as this incredible instrument that I've been granted.
yeah,
Not
I
that
love
I
that.
love everything about my body, like, I can look in any magazine, on any television show and say, "If I could have chosen, I would have chosen that body." You know what I mean? But what my body can do, what my body has accomplished, what my instrument does for other people is pretty freaking amazing. And
Absolutely.
so I don't know. I think our job is to figure out what can this instrument that we have randomly been granted or that we have chosen, whichever it is, right? This
Right.
instrument we're in, like, what's the most important thing we can do with it?
Absolutely. And it sounds like you just got like tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, let's go in this direction."
Yeah.
Thank you for that reflection on the meat suit. I'm going to think more about that because I totally hear you, especially after witnessing my husband, whose vessel didn't give him the time that that we all wish that he had had here. So it absolutely is very significant and special, and maybe meat suit doesn't give it quite as much significance or value. So I'm curious, when you were on your path of moving from corporate into this like spiritual realm and developing your mediumship qualities, you said it felt super woo at first. So how did you kind of shift into like really believing that this was real and this was what you were meant to do?
When I found the evidence, when I found my first evidential medium who could produce so much evidence of my friend who had passed recently, and I was just stunned. I mean, there was no way she could have researched uh,
Yeah.
what she shared with, and she was a nurse, and she clearly was just doing it from the heart because I paid for a 45-minute session. She gave me an hour and a half and then told me that my friend still had more to say and that she was going to reschedule more time with me for free.
Wow.
So once I discovered that kind of authentic experience, I went searching for, can I find people who teach this skill, who help somebody like me who's very analytic and very corporate find more of that part of myself? And can I find people who have a lot of credentials in terms of
Mhm.
I would respect so that I know that they're not just, I don't know. There's a lot of people who want followers. I'm
Mhm.
looking
Mhm.
for a follower. I really wanted somebody who could be a coach and a mentor. When I started to find people that I could trust and that could who could teach me, and then I started to discover communities of people like me who were
Yeah.
discovering and feeling called and really, wanting to learn how to do this
Mhm.
it just quickly culminated to this view that it doesn't have to be woo-woo. We don't have to talk about, burning incense
Yeah.
and stuff. It's it's a skill like any other skill. I learned to sing opera. I can learn to let somebody use my vehicle or my instrument, for a different purpose as well.
I love that. I guess what I just want to reflect back to our listeners is like, I can only imagine how scary it might have been for you leaving such a like traditional background in finance and then going into like a very spiritual unknown realm. And, for anyone who might be at a similar crossroads in their life, it's like continuing to follow our heart and the curiosities and the breadcrumbs, and then eventually you do start to kind of build evidence and realize like, yes, this is for me. And then this part of ourselves, the soul part of ourselves, does speak louder than the rationale and the safety and our fears, essentially. So thank you for
Uh,
sharing that part of your journey.
Very well said. I remember, Emily, even, towards the end of my career, that, going into work and having to speak to my fear, having to say to myself every morning, "We're gonna do the right thing. We don't care if we get fired. We're gonna do the right thing. We don't care if we get fired." And when you start recognizing, your own fear and how it holds you back in different parts of your life, you're right. You do start to head towards your real mission.
Life can get hella complicated. We chase success, we hustle for money, we strive to make an impact. We juggle the day to day responsibilities, and we try to make everyone else around us happy. But at the end of the day, does any of this actually matter? I can't answer that question for you because what truly matters is different for everyone. There is no formula, no blueprint, no checklist for a life well lived. But the one thing we all share is a limited amount of time to live it. And that's why I think facing your mortality is the key to unlocking a life that truly matters. Death is a mirror. When you confront the fact that this all ends, the noise fades away. The ego-driven shoulds, the societal pressures, and the endless to-do lists suddenly don't seem so important. Because facing your mortality isn't about fear. It's about freedom. It's about waking up cutting through the distractions and making choices that actually align with your soul. That's why I created YOLO, a 3-part transformational experience designed to help you engage with your mortality so that you can actually start living. You only live once. Are you ready to make the most of it? If so, head to the link in my show notes or go to www.IamEmilyBingham.com/YOLO. Yeah, it's beautiful. So can you tell us how you then began VerySoul? How did VerySoul begin from your work as a medium?
Yeah, so I was, training to be a medium and had just started doing client sessions, um, and I was in a very open state. I was welcoming anyone and anyone in and, just trying to be as open as I could so that I could be the best channel possible. And what started happening for me was as I was going to sleep at night, which is a time when your brain waves are relaxing, uh,
Mhm.
I started to get downloads. And those downloads looked to me like packets of information that I would have gotten at work for
Mm,
structuring or for a strategic change. So I found myself not able to fall asleep until I would get down and write in my notebook. And that happened for about 2 weeks straight.
wow.
Discombobulated. So I wasn't really sure what it was at first, but I just knew I had to write it down and then I could fall asleep. And when I stepped back and I looked at all of it, I was like, oh my gosh, they're asking me to build a platform. Like they're asking me to build this technology and they're giving me all sorts of guidance about it needs to be global and it needs to operate to these standards and it needs to support mediums this way, it needs to support clients that way.
Mm.
And at first, honestly, when I realized what it was, I said no because because I had just retired and I I was really enjoying my retirement. I really just wanted to be a medium.
Yeah.
And then I started talking to a few of my friends who are mediums, and they convinced me that this was just spirit trying to use my instrument to its greatest potential. And as I started to think about it from that perspective, I was like, who am I to say no?
Yeah.
Who am I to say no? I welcome them in. You know, I told them I'm here to serve. I'm here to help, and this is what they need. And it's it was so needed in the industry. So we started building VerySoul just a little over 3 years ago.
Wow. So I love it. I mean, it makes total sense that you would be the person that spirit selects to like build this this platform with your background and both of those, just the the woo and the science or the practicality and the business and the spirit side just like coming together. It's perfect. Um I want to just go back a little bit for our listeners who are not as familiar with like the download. First of all, who are you receiving the download from? Do you have like a team of light or are these deceased loved ones? And how do you tell if like the download is different than just like the normal mind stuff? How do you
Yeah, okay.
separate the
So,
two?
I mean, how you tell if it's different, that is exactly what mediumship training is about, is
Okay.
saying, what is your mind and what is them? So,
Okay.
that's part of the training. I don't know exactly who it came from. I believe, I know some people who might be on the team, based on the way things came and the language that was used. Um, but it was so complete and it was so well thought out, and when I moved it from my notepad to a, PowerPoint deck, and I looked at it and I was like, "Oh my god, like, it's brilliant." And still when people say, "This works so well, this is incredible, blah, blah," I'm like, "Yeah, it's brilliant," because I didn't design it. I mean, I'm implementing it, and
Yeah,
I'm managing it, but I didn't design it. It solves so many problems in one fell swoop.
I love that. Can you so I just want to so the whole I'm just really like kind of stuck on this like separation between you and like spirit. Can you give us just like a couple little tips on how? Or is it like a way like, 'cause I do my own I try to call on my guides.
Right.
Um, during my morning meditations. Like I try to empty out. So I
Yeah.
empty my energy out, and I really like I probably take like at least 10 minutes to just do a meditation and visualization of all of my thoughts and fears and emotions, like a French press, like
Yeah. Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And then I literally like I'll ask Ian sometimes. I'll be like, Ian, there's this thing going on with Izzy. How do you want to help me? And then I wait for whatever it is, the message to arrive. But beyond that, are there other tools that you use to separate?
So the easiest for me, again, being very practical, the easiest way to do it is to recognize that most of your inspirations and instincts, gut instincts, is actually coming from advisors, from
Yeah.
spirit guides, from people trying to help you. If I have a inkling that there is no logical reason why I would have that inkling, I know it's them.
Mm,
I know it's them. It feels slightly different. It's hard to describe how it feels different, but it's suddenly there and it's a complete thought. It's not like the beginning of a thought. So if my mind creates it, I might have the beginning of a thought like, oh, there's a problem over here. I wonder how I should fix that. I wonder if, that's what my mind would do.
mhm. Yeah.
But if suddenly there's an answer, that's not my mind doing that. Like, how is my mind doing that? So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
for example, I get this a lot. Um, I think because of VerySoul, I'm often compelled to go talk to complete strangers, or they're compelled to come talk to me. So this happened to me on the beach. I was getting out of the water. I had just been snorkeling, and a woman came running up to me on the beach. And I thought she was going to ask me, what did you see out there? I thought she'd want to know about the snorkeling, but she said, "Why do I feel like I need to know you?" You know. And at first, I was like, I don't know. I don't know why you need to know me. We talked a little bit. It turned out she had just had somebody pass recently. And
Oh,
I said, "Oh,
wow.
okay. It's not that you need to know me, it's that they want you to know an easy way to connect if you're interested in a communication," which she was. I have that happen in the grocery store a lot, or I feel compelled to, I'm checking out, like at the grocery store, and I'm checking out, and my mind is drawn from my day to day busyness to that person and their eyes. And that's when I know I should say, "I want to offer you something for free. It's okay. No pressure. You don't have to do it." I never start doing the actual mediumship in public, or I would never surprise somebody with that.
Right.
But I can offer them the Very Soul website and say, if you're ever interested, we offer some free sessions. Come try it.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and often what they say is, "I was just thinking, I was just wondering, I was just talking to my sister about a medium, or I just lost my mother," or, you know. So you start to learn over time that when you just go with those inclinations,
Yeah.
that you're being led.
You're being led. I love this, and thanks for breaking that down because when I first started venturing into more spiritual communities, I kept hearing people say, "Oh, I got to download, I got to hit, I got to," and I'd be like, "What are they talking about?" And I had never thought about more of those like intuitive hits for lack of a better word as like being guided by spirit. And it totally makes sense now that it would like seeing it through that light has been a game changer for me. And it just, to me, it makes life all the more magical as well. And not in a woo way, but in like a wow, like how just epic and magical. Like it's so profound, you know?
And as you do that more and more and more, you will have more and more crazy experiences where you're like, "There's no way that I could have made that up, or that this is a coincidence," or, it's just
Yeah.
so many things happen. But I think you said it so well. I think sometimes we use so much woo woo language around this whole space that we make it too difficult for people.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
there's constantly stuff in your mind that's not you.
Yeah.
Pay attention to it.
Point blank. That's it. I agree. And I almost think that sometimes we the spiritual community can get so like you said, with like burning sage and like I love all that stuff.
Yep.
And I think it can almost be like, oh my God, like what are all these people doing? I have no understanding. And you're right, like it is so simple when you just break it down. And that's like why you're, successful in what you do and with VerySoul. So can you just tell us a little bit more? I shared about VerySoul on the intro, but just tell us a little bit more about like what it is and kind of the impact that you're seeing for both the mediums and for the clients that you're connecting.
Sure. So, VerySoul is a community of thousands of mediums from around the world who are organized through an online platform. And what it does for mediums is it helps mediums grow and develop. So, for instance, when I first started discovering my mediumship, I didn't have an easy place to go to practice my skills. I didn't have a safe place to go to practice my skills. We provide that space for free, where mediums can practice with each other and
Mm,
learn from each other. And in so doing, they start to develop that refinement of being able to tell the difference between their mind and someone else placing information in their mind. Um, so it does that. It helps the mediums feel less alone because, as you can imagine, when you start to realize that you have these skills, first you go through a stage where you say, "Am I crazy?" And then other people tell you you're crazy. um, but there's just a lot of emotional stuff we have to go through to develop. So it helps the mediums with their development, gives them tons of feedback because they get feedback after every session, whether it's a practice or not. It evaluates the mediums to help know when they are ready to start working with clients. And then it gives them a gentle intro into working with clients so that they're not suddenly on the street working with the general public. Instead,
yeah,
we have a group of volunteers who serve as what we call starter clients. And that it helps keep the stress off the mediums because mediums who are ethical can put a lot of stress on themselves and that shuts down the connections. So
totally.
we have this beautiful low stress environment that allows them to slowly ease into doing client work. And then when they do those starter clients well, then they can eventually graduate to working with the general public. So that's what it does
Okay.
with mediums. For
Beautiful.
it gives clients finally a center point where they can go for a trusted interaction with mediums. We are not like other psychic companies and things that are, trying to make big bucks and do frankly make big bucks off of the clients.
Oh, yeah.
So much of what we do is free because we are just trying to create a trustworthy place where clients know that the mediums are ethical, that the mediums have the qualifications to do good work, and that they have a way to share their experience if it's good or if it's not good. So if a client has an unsatisfactory experience with a medium, we want to know about that. Um,
Yeah.
when you're out there in the general world looking for a medium, otherwise you're you're trying to go based on what other people's experience has been, or you're finding somebody on the internet, and you just never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. No, I love the Very Soul resource, and I've directed a bunch of my clients there who've had they still continue to chat with the mediums that they found through the platform. And I do think it's important because even in my experience, I was finding mediums through word of mouth, but it was really expensive on a couple of occasions and I was able to negotiate my way down. But even so, I just like how you guys have it all laid out where you can talk to people for free, you can also pay, but you know that they're vetted, you know that they're trustworthy. And I think for the client, like you're already, I mean, for me, I won't speak for everyone, after going through a loss, you're in a very vulnerable
Oh, yeah.
situation. And the last thing you want is, I don't know, someone messing with you. And hopefully they think that would never be the case. But it's just, it's scary enough to go into the situation as it is. So knowing that people have been vetted, that they've practiced this on other mediums and on each other, and that they wouldn't be on this platform if they hadn't been, like
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, and the mediums, they do hundreds of sessions before they are qualified for for the next level. So um, they're really putting their hearts and souls into this work, because you can only do a few sessions, maybe 2 or 3 sessions a day, um, in terms of what you can manage for your own energy. But so we offer everyone um, a free session to start. And it's not like a 10-minute session. I saw some websites, they do that. They'll say, first 10 minutes free, then $10 per minute after that. That's so gamey. Uh,
Yeah,
to me, it is the opposite of what you should be experiencing when you're grieving. When you're
right.
grieving, somebody should be honoring your grief, and you should be going through a compassionate process in a compassionate community, meeting with a compassionate and highly skilled medium. You know,
Yeah,
be just filled with compassion from beginning to end, and we go to great lengths to have that engineered into our process. Then once you've had, your one great session, you can choose to come back and, hire one of our professional mediums. And our mediums work for some very, very reasonable prices. We've got
yeah.
some incredible, incredible mediums. I never talk about the mediums. I can never talk about the mediums enough. They are so incredibly skilled, these mediums. It's just so, so fabulous.
I love it. I wanna go sign up and do another one. I always like to I have, like, certain dates, like Ian's death anniversary or my birthday, and sometimes I switch up the type of reading that I do, but I love doing the death anniversary and, like, a type of reading, so it's really special. Sally, would you say that very soul and mediumship is your soul's calling?
Well, it definitely is right now. I don't know. I'm 62, so I don't know how much time I have left, but I definitely feel like I feel like I'm doing very important work.
Yeah,
I feel grateful every day for what we get to create together. There's nothing that I can imagine doing in the world right now that feels more important to me. My husband and I talk about that a lot about, if we can have impact someplace, where will we have it? And we used to talk about that in terms of,
mm,
when we were both in corporate jobs. And that was a tough conversation because then you don't really have time to allocate. You have more,
mm,
you have time. But now, knowing how much we're doing to help people find their connections and
yeah,
to relieve some of their suffering. And a lot of the suffering is unnecessary, by the way. A lot of it is they're holding on to the fact that they couldn't be there when their loved one passed, or some guilt about something in the relationship, things like that. Like, our loved ones don't want that for us. So if we can
yeah,
help relieve that through a session, that's amazing. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, I mean, it feels like the most important work that I can imagine right now. But who knows?
yeah.
Who knows?
I love that you and your husband ask yourself that question, like, yeah, what is the best way that I can be making an impact right now? Like, what does this collective moment need from me in a way that utilizes my gifts and talents? And it just seems like you've taken from all these different experiences and found that, like, unique puzzle piece for yourself, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'd like to take credit for finding it, but I think I think I just
Thank
listened.
you, spirit.
When people say, "It's so amazing that you're doing this. It's so amazing this or that," and I think, actually, what's amazing to me is that I listened because I don't generally let people tell me what to do.
It's so hard though. I am really in the process of trying to be more led right now, not just like not believing that it's all just on me and that there are people, spirits, my team of light, Ian guiding me into like what is truly meant for me. And I think just trusting that and being open and listening and taking action on that, I mean, talk about completely rewiring our brain and releasing old patterns and stories, right, about how we're meant to live this life. So I see the work in that, and I'm like in awe of everything you've
Well,
done.
I'm
So
60, so I've been doing it for a long time.
I just wanted to hear, Sally, are there, you just talked a little bit about how after a loved one dies, often the griever is left with maybe feeling guilty about something that wasn't said. They have other regrets. They don't have closure. In your experience, what are some ways that mediums have really helped grievers? Um, yeah, like what are some of the major like takeaways that grievers have gained from the experience of connecting to their deceased?
Yeah, I think once the evidence has been established, so once the client understands that this really is their person, there are definitely themes of what the communications are after that.
Mhm,
It is almost always to relieve some kind of suffering. It could be um, anything from things that might seem small to someone else. So, for instance, I'm thinking about a client that we had a couple months ago who he came to us the week after his wife passed. And although there were so many things that he had to deal with, including children, um, he was stuck on how his wife's funeral had been handled by her family.
mhm.
That he felt like he hadn't done his wife justice by how how the funeral was handled.
Yeah.
And the most important thing she wanted him to know was it doesn't matter. Like
Mhm.
I don't care. Like I don't care. He might have carried that for decades because we also get those people in who will tell us, that their loved one after the session, they might say, I've been carrying that for decades.
Yeah.
My mom died as a child, and I've been thinking about how I wasn't nice to her the last day that I saw her. Uh,
Mhm.
so they want us to know that it doesn't matter if we were there, that they know that we love them, that the little things that bother us about what we might have done differently, they don't care.
Mhm.
Whether you remarry or don't remarry, or, the decisions that you're making in your life now, they don't care. They just want you to be happy. They just want you to be, you know, um, to use the rest of your life well. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes they want to apologize. Sometimes they want people to know, like, I own what I did to you. Uh,
Yeah.
I see that clearly that I hurt you. Um, so there's definitely themes, but they're very specific to the situation. And the relief that it creates is tremendous. I mean, we see it all the time in the feedback. People will say
Yeah.
this changes their lives, not because they won't grieve anymore, but the grief takes a different shape.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just had a experience come through where Ian did apologize to me. He said, I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you." And it makes me emotional thinking about it, right? And it's like, of course he was, but for yeah, I mean, in those final parts of his life, like, he wasn't able to take care of us. We were taking care of him, and I was surprised to hear that come through from him. But, yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that connecting with him was just, like, evidence, evidence that he's there and that I can maintain that connection far beyond the physical. But I do love that you can go to mediums for closure, for forgiveness, for connection, for advice. Like there's so many ways that you can um use your work. And so
Yeah,
it's really powerful.
absolutely. But I do encourage people, don't become dependent on mediums. Just like I think you shouldn't become dependent on psychics. It's the same thing. It's your life. Have the experience, have your own interpretation of that experience. which I think is generally going to be, holy cow, this is real. They really are still there, right?
Yeah.
um, and then go on your journey. Decide what your next step in your spiritual journey is. You find your connections. We're here to help whenever you need help or reassurance, but it shouldn't be a every 6 months for the rest of your life kind of routine. This isn't getting your hair done. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I like feel into when the time for the next reading is right for me, and everyone's process is different.
Yeah.
Um, so Sally, for anyone who wants to connect to their deceased loved one but might just be feeling afraid or skeptical, do you have any advice or reassurance that you can give them?
Yeah. So, advice would be just follow your heart. So, when you feel ready, then come sign up.
Mhm.
And force you into it, because if you're not ready, um, then it's not meant to happen yet. You'll know when you feel ready. Um, don't be afraid, because the sessions are always beautiful. Um, I say that, knowing what we offer at Very Soul, I do say be cautious about some of the offerings that you'll see on the general internet, because there are people peddling all sorts of stories about casting spells or removing spells or releasing souls, or crazy stuff that's just
Mhm.
made up and meant to make money for somebody. But if you find a reputable medium who is ethical, you can relax and come in and just let yourself experience it. Let yourself
Yeah.
it. It, we're not asking you to believe anything. We are not a religion. We're not trying
Mhm.
what to believe. We purposefully do not tell you what to believe, um, because it is meant to be part of your journey. And that's why your person comes through. And that's why your person talks about things that are specific between you and them, and that only you and them may understand.
Yeah. That's such great advice, and the readiness, right? Don't let anyone force you into it, and you make of it what you want. It's all yours for choosing what pieces you wanna keep, what pieces you wanna let go, and what meaning you wanna create of the entire experience. And
It
yeah.
is a very, very subtle experience, even for the mediums.
Mm.
So, sometimes I think clients, when they have their first session, they think we're like on the phone. Ask them where you left the bread, or ask them, what the lockbox number is for the safety deposit box or whatever. And sometimes we can get those things, right? But it's not like we're on the phone. There's this whiteboard in our mind of imagination and information, or is being thrown up on that, or we're hearing things, or we're sensing things in our bodies, but it's subtle. And so
Yeah.
we don't necessarily have a full statement from them, um, the way you might if you were in a regular dialogue. We might get first information. It might be a daisy, and then a
Mhm.
bit more, and then, oh, he's showing me that he used to give you daisies. You know,
Mhm.
it comes kind of in pieces. So as
Yeah.
we get the information, they share more. So if it feels a little cryptic at first, please don't jump to conclusions that it's not real.
Yeah.
Listen and just stay open-minded, and then decide once you've been through the experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's definitely worth I mean, it's hard to almost explain it until you've gone and tried it, and I think, yeah, just staying open and seeing what comes through and how it lands for you is the greatest way to start.
But I also think, one more thing, it's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to come with a skeptical mind. I think you shouldn't just trust anybody and everything, right? So listen to the evidence and make sure that it is compelling for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I love that piece. Well, Sally, where can people connect with you? Where can they find out more about VerySoul? We'll obviously be linking your website in the show notes, but anywhere else?
Yeah. So, besides the website, we're on Facebook and Instagram, and a little bit on TikTok. Not as much on TikTok, but at VerySoul app. So VerySoul app. Especially if you go to Facebook, VerySoul app, you'll see daily we post information that clients have shared with us about their sessions. And we do that just to show the range of what's going on the
Mhm.
platform as thousands and thousands of people are coming through. It's a
Wow.
beautiful, it's such a beautiful energy, and I have the immense pleasure of watching it all happen and all the beautiful work that these amazing mediums are doing, how it's affecting so many lives. I just love it.
Yeah. It's so cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your gifts and talents and explaining, kind of just like peeling back the curtain on what evidential mediumship is. And thank you for following the calling and bringing Very Soul to life.
Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing too, because it is all part of the same effort. It's all part of the same effort, helping people deal with their grief and make
Mhm.
grief, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, Sally. We'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening in to It's Just Me, Emily. I hope that you enjoyed the show. If you did, it would be a great honor if you could subscribe and then leave a review. And if you do so, I will send you a beautiful hardback copy of my book, Love and Grief, to the first 20 people who subscribe and leave a review. When you do that, it just helps my podcast get boosted and more people will be able to come in and view the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in another episode.